No one knew their names. No one asked. On the dusty outskirts of El Paso, where stray dogs roamed between mounds of forgotten trash and the sun turned the asphalt into fire, two little girls walked like ghosts. No shoes. No backpacks. No adult hands to hold on to. Just each other. Leona, the older one, was 7. But her face could have belonged to someone much older. Someone who had already seen too much and learned too early that the world was not a safe place. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes scanned everything. Every car, every alley, every face. Ember, just 5, clung to her sister's hand like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. Her big, tired eyes flicked around, searching for something familiar, something kind, something that could explain where her parents had gone. They had no idea where they were, or how long it had been. Time didn't make sense anymore, not after that night. They had tried to cross the border with their parents in the dead of night, following a whisper of hope and a contact who promised to guide them to a safe house in Phoenix. Their father, Grant, held Ember in his arms. Their mother, Miranda, gripped Leona's hand and kept whispering, "Just stay quiet, baby." Almost there. But the plan fell apart before they even made it halfway. Leona remembered the chaos like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The flashing red and blue lights. The sirens slicing through the desert silence. Men shouting in English and Spanish. Dogs barking. People running in every direction, some dropping bags, others falling to the ground, hands in the air. She remembered someone pushing her hard. Her mother's hand slipping away. Her father shouting her name. Ember screaming. Then, just emptiness. In that one blink, her entire world split apart. She hadn't even realized she was running until they were halfway down a dark road, and Ember's cries were all she could hear. Her legs burned. Her heart pounded. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. There was no one to stop for. That was days ago, maybe a week. She didn't know. They hadn't eaten anything real since then. Just scraps. Dumpster finds. Bits of old tortilla chips and warm soda from a bottle someone dropped on the street. At night, they curled behind dumpsters or under stairwells. Ember always cried before falling asleep. Sometimes from hunger, sometimes from cold, but mostly from the terror of not knowing. "Where's Mommy?" she'd whisper. And Leona would answer the same way every time. "She's looking for us. But we gotta stay alive so she can find us." It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. Leona didn't know where their parents were, if they'd been taken, arrested, deported, or worse. But Ember didn't need that truth. Not yet. By the 3rd day, they had learned a few things. Where to find water fountains that worked. Which gas stations didn't kick you out right away. Which dogs barked but didn't bite. And that staying invisible was the only way to survive. They walked during the early morning, before the heat became unbearable, and again after sundown, when the desert cooled and people were less likely to notice two dirty little girls hugging the shadows. On one of those mornings, Leona led Ember down a cracked sidewalk lined with abandoned tires and broken signs. They followed the smell of something fried, maybe a taco truck, and past an alley where a man slept under a sheet of cardboard. Ember stared. Leona pulled her closer and whispered, "Don't look. Just walk." It was a game now. A deadly one. A wrong glance, a wrong step, and they could be noticed. And noticed meant questions. Questions meant separation. Again. One afternoon, the heat was so intense Ember nearly collapsed. Her lips were dry, and her feet were raw. Leona made them rest under a tree behind a pawn shop. They sat in silence until Ember quietly asked, "Are we still in America?" Leona hesitated. "Yeah, she said finally. "We are. Then why is it worse here?" Leona didn't have an answer. She didn't know how to explain that they had crossed into a country that promised safety but offered none to girls like them. Nameless, paperless, parentless. That night, they slept behind a row of trash bins. Leona found a discarded towel and wrapped Ember in it. She stayed awake, eyes wide, listening for footsteps, for voices, for anything that might mean danger. There were moments, brief, cruel moments, when she wanted to cry, scream, call for her mother. But she couldn't afford it. Not when Ember still believed she had all the answers. Not when being strong was the only thing keeping them together. In the quiet, with only the buzz of faraway traffic and the rustle of rats in the garbage, Leona made herself a promise. "I will not let her die. I don't care what I have to do." As she watched Ember sleep, breathing slow and shallow, Leona whispered a memory like a lullaby. "Remember Grandma's bread? The warm kind with sugar on top." Ember stirred and smiled in her sleep. "We'll find that again," Leona said, barely audible. "I promise." But in her heart, Leona knew she didn't believe in promises anymore. Only in walking, hiding, waiting, and surviving. One more night, one more day, then maybe something would change. If you like interesting stories, leave your like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our content. And let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. We'd love to hear from you. By the time the girls reached the city center, their feet were blistered, their lips cracked, and their hope hanging by a thread. They hadn't intended to come to El Paso proper. They had no map, no sense of direction. They followed instinct, and the smell of cooked meat that traveled with the desert wind. They watched where people went, listened to the language they spoke, and followed the noise of daily life like shadows creeping behind forgotten walls. Leona was no longer just a child. That version of her had been left behind on the border. She had become something else. A quiet strategist. A protector. A girl who noticed things that grown men often missed, like which alley had a working faucet behind a restaurant, or what time the taco vendors threw out the unsold meat. That's how they survived. Every evening, as the sun melted behind the Franklin Mountains and the city lights flickered on, Leona guided Ember through back streets, alleyways, and parking lots until they reached a hidden underpass beneath the I-10 freeway. There, she had carved out something resembling a home. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. She found a space between two massive concrete columns, barely wide enough for both of them to lie down. The ground was hard, cold, and stained with old oil, but it was sheltered, nearly invisible from the road above. With a ripped plastic tarp she'd pulled from a construction site, flattened cardboard boxes from a dumpster, and 2 empty milk crates for storage, she transformed the narrow space into something Ember called our secret room. Every object there had a purpose. A broken shoelace held the tarp in place. A pile of worn-out clothes served as a mattress. Leona kept their valuables: 2 spoons, a small flashlight, a cracked compact mirror, and a plastic container of water, inside a shoebox that she buried beneath the crates each night. The only color in their world came from an old cereal box Ember insisted on keeping, its cartoon tiger now faded and water-damaged. The nights were brutal. The freeway above never stopped humming. Trucks rumbled by every few minutes, making the ground tremble like a quiet, relentless earthquake. The air stank of gasoline, hot rubber, and dried urine from passers-by who used the underpass as a public toilet. Sometimes drunk men stumbled nearby, yelling things neither girl wanted to understand. Leona would hold Ember tight and press a hand over her ears until it passed. And yet, this place was better than the open streets. It was hidden, and hidden meant safe. Ember asked fewer questions now. Maybe she was too tired. Or maybe she understood, in her own quiet way, that questions didn't matter anymore. What mattered was when they'd eat, when they'd be warm, when Mommy would come. Leona spoke little, but she thought constantly. She kept a mental list of times and places, which restaurant dumped their trash after closing, which corner store had a faucet outside, where the streetlights didn't work, perfect for moving unseen. She watched people like a hawk. Which vendor might be kind enough to leave food near the edge of his stand, which one shouted at loiterers. They learned the rhythm of the city by survival. One morning, just before dawn, Leona woke up to Ember coughing again. It was deep, harsh, and wet. She'd been like that for 2 days now. Leona sat up and felt her sister's forehead with the back of her hand. Warm, too warm. Her lips were chapped and peeling. Leona didn't panic. She couldn't afford to. Instead, she whispered, "Stay under the blanket. I'll be back soon." She crept out into the pre-dawn chill and made her way to a taqueria 4 blocks away, one they had scouted before. It opened at 7. Workers came early to prep the food. The manager sometimes yelled at his employees, but didn't chase away the homeless who sat quietly on the curb. That was all the invitation Leona needed. She waited, silent, under the edge of the window. When the first bag of trash was tossed out, she moved quickly. Inside, she found the jackpot, a burrito half-wrapped in foil and a cup with watered-down soda. Not fresh, not clean, but it would do. When she returned to the underpass, Ember was curled up in a ball, shivering. Leona placed the food in front of her. "Eat." Slowly. Ember obeyed, her hands trembling as she unwrapped the burrito. The moment she took a bite, her eyes watered, not from spice, but relief. Leona looked away. She didn't want Ember to see her watching, didn't want her to feel like a burden, even though she never, not once, felt that way. Later that night, as trucks thundered above them and Ember drifted into a restless sleep, Leona whispered into the dark, "Tomorrow, we'll find bread. The kind Grandma used to make. With sugar on top, remember?" Ember murmured something in response. Maybe a yes, maybe just a sound, and Leona closed her eyes. She was exhausted. Her body ached, but her mind wouldn't rest. She didn't know how long they could keep this up. Ember was getting weaker, and she was just a kid. She needed medicine, a doctor, a bed that didn't shake every time a semi rolled by. But what were the options? Call the cops? Risk getting taken? Be sent who knows where? No. This cardboard house, as filthy, cold, and crude as it was safer than any system she'd heard of. Until someone proved otherwise, this was their shelter, their hiding place, their fortress, and she would protect it with everything she had. The sun was already burning through the horizon when Leona opened her eyes. The underpass, usually dark and cool in the early morning, was thick with heat before the city even stirred. The air felt heavier, stickier, almost like it was warning them. Today would not be kind. Leona sat up and glanced at Ember, still curled up beneath their worn blanket. Her cheeks were pale, lips dry, and her small body trembled despite the warmth. The cough from the night before had worsened. It came now in spasms, deep and tearing. They hadn't eaten in nearly a full day. The little Ember had kept down yesterday came back up during the night. Leona had heard her throwing up in the corner, trying not to wake her. But Leona never slept deeply. Not anymore. She reached for their shoebox and pulled out the last water bottle, less than a third full. She tilted it toward Ember. "Drink slow." Ember obeyed without a word. Her silence scared Leona more than any cough ever could. She had to move. Staying here meant waiting for Ember to get sicker, maybe die. But she didn't know what else to do. She thought about the gas station 2 blocks over. Sometimes people threw out food there, half-eaten sandwiches, expired yogurt, cold pizza crusts. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Come on," she said gently, brushing Ember's hair back. "We'll find food. Then we rest. You just have to walk a little. Just a little." Ember nodded slowly. Her body said no, but she got up anyway. She always listened to Leona, even when it hurt. They made their way through the back streets, avoiding main roads. The concrete was already radiating heat. Ember lagged behind, her small legs dragging. Her breathing was shallow. Leona slowed her pace and waited at every corner. She didn't say it out loud, but her heart was racing. When they reached the alley behind the gas station, the big blue dumpster was open. It was always a risk. Sometimes raccoons were inside, sometimes sharp cans. But hunger had no patience for fear. Leona climbed up the side carefully, peering over. Nothing. Then, luck. Half a sandwich still wrapped in foil. Some fries. A crumpled bottle of orange juice. She grabbed it all fast, like it might disappear if she hesitated. She turned, holding her prize with both hands, and stepped down. That's when she heard it. The wheels first. Then the voice. "Hui!" a boy shouted. It all happened too fast. Ember had stepped out from behind the dumpster, just as the boy, maybe 12, maybe 13, came flying down the narrow alley on a red bicycle. No helmet. Going too fast. He didn't see her in time. The sound was dry and cruel. A thud. A short scream. Then silence. The sandwich hit the ground. Leona dropped everything and ran. The bike was already on its side, wheels spinning. The boy scrambled to his feet, face pale. "I didn't, he stammered. Then, panicking, he grabbed his bike and rode off, not even looking back. Leona didn't scream. She didn't cry. She dropped to her knees and pulled Ember close. Her sister's eyes were open, blinking in shock. Her leg, the right one, was bent wrong. So wrong. Bone pushing where it shouldn't. Her tiny fingers trembled. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Leona's hands shook. Not from fear. From the weight of knowing she didn't have a single option. No phone. No ID. No adult. No one. She looked around wildly. The alley was empty again. Just them and the stink of garbage and the sound of Ember's shallow, gasping breath. She could have screamed. Could have collapsed. But she didn't. She remembered something, a name someone had said once. A man they'd overheard arguing near a taco stand, talking about a public hospital. County General, he'd said. They don't ask questions, just patch you up. It was far. Miles, maybe. But it was all she had. She wrapped Ember in the tarp they used as a blanket, cradling her like their mother used to. Ember whimpered when the broken leg shifted, but she didn't fight. She trusted Leona too much to resist. Leona adjusted her grip. Ember's body felt heavier than ever. Or maybe her own arms were weaker now. She started walking. The sun was up now, full and savage. Each step was slower than the last. Her knees wobbled. Her back screamed. Her vision blurred more than once. But she never stopped. She passed a school with children playing outside. No one looked her way. A security guard turned his head just as she passed. At one point, she thought she might faint, but she bit her tongue, tasted blood, and kept going. 2 hours later, she saw the faded sign. El Paso County General Hospital. She staggered toward the entrance. The automatic doors opened with a whoosh of cold air. And that was it. Her knees gave out. She dropped. People rushed toward her. Voices everywhere. Someone tried to take Ember. Leona screamed and grabbed on. "No!" she yelled hoarse. "Don't touch her!" Then, a voice. Calm, deep, unfamiliar. "It's okay. I'm right here. I've got her." A man. Glasses. A backpack. Kneeling beside her. "I'm Amos," he said. "You're safe now." And before she could even understand what safe meant anymore, everything went black. The first thing Leona heard was beeping. Soft, rhythmic, steady. Then came the smell, a mix of bleach, latex, and something metallic. Not home. Not the underpass. Not the street. She opened her eyes slowly, heart already racing. White ceiling. Fluorescent light. Machines. A thin blanket over her. Her shoes still on. She sat up too fast. "Where's Ember?" Her voice came out sharp, cracked from thirst, but loud enough to bring someone running. A nurse opened the door, wide-eyed. "She's here," the woman said gently. "Your sister's in surgery. Her leg was badly broken, but she's going to be okay. You got her here in time." Surgery. The word hit Leona like a brick. Surgery was for people with insurance, with family, with parents. They didn't belong in places like this. She looked around wildly, body tense, muscles ready to run, until she saw him. Sitting in the corner across the room, a man in his late 40s with messy hair, a worn button-up shirt, and wire-rimmed glasses. A backpack at his feet. A notebook open on his lap. He stood when she looked at him. "Hi," he said, voice careful, low, like someone trying not to scare a wounded animal. "I'm Amos." She stared at him, not blinking. "I saw you outside the hospital," he continued. "You were carrying your sister. You collapsed. They were going to take her in alone, but I said I'd stay. So they let me stay." She didn't speak. Didn't trust him. Didn't trust anyone. "I'm not trying to take you anywhere," he added quickly. "I'm just here, in case you need someone." She looked down at her hands. Dirty. Scratched. Her nails black with grime. This wasn't supposed to happen. Ember wasn't supposed to get hurt. They were just supposed to survive. "Where is she?" she asked again, softer. He pointed toward the hallway. "They took her in about an hour ago. She's in good hands. One of the nurses said she might be in a cast for months, but she's going to heal. You saved her. Saved her." The words made something shift inside Leona's chest. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried since that night at the border, but she felt it. That swelling behind the eyes. The tightness in her throat. "Are you a doctor?" she asked. He smiled, just barely. "No. I teach literature at the university. I was leaving the hospital after visiting a friend when I saw you." She looked at him, hard. "You don't know me." "I know what I saw," he said simply. "A little girl carrying another little girl who was bleeding and unconscious. I couldn't walk away." Silence. "You could've," she said finally. "Most people do." Amos lowered his eyes. He didn't argue. The nurse came back a while later with a juice box and a sandwich. Leona stared at it like it was a trick. Amos watched her gently push the sandwich toward the edge of the tray before quietly asking, "When was the last time you ate?" Leona didn't answer. He didn't press. Instead, he sat back in the chair and waited. Hours passed. A doctor came in, told her Ember's surgery had gone well. The bone had been reset. She was sedated, resting, but stable. There'd be pain, a long recovery, but she would walk again. And then came the question. "Who's the legal guardian?" the doctor asked. Leona froze. The nurse looked toward Amos. He stood, heart pounding, unsure of the legality but absolutely certain of one thing. He wasn't going to let them get pulled into the system and disappear. "I'm not family," he said clearly, "but I'm here for them. I'll take responsibility. Just give me a minute, please." The nurse hesitated, then nodded and stepped outside. Amos knelt down beside Leona. "I know you don't know me," he said, "and I don't expect you to trust me. But if someone doesn't speak for you, the state will. And the state doesn't always listen. They'll separate you, maybe take you somewhere far, away from each other. You don't want that, do you?" Leona's fists clenched. "No." "Then let me help," he said. "Let me just stand in the gap until you have someone who can." She looked at him for a long time. Then, the smallest of nods. That's all he needed. By the end of the day, paperwork had been filled out. Nothing official. Nothing permanent. Just enough to allow Amos to visit Ember, to stay near Leona, to be present. He called someone named Maribel, a social worker he knew from the university, one who'd helped students in undocumented situations before. She came quietly, without uniforms, without threats. She brought clean clothes, a soft voice, and information. Options. Leona didn't like the word. It sounded like a trap. But Amos stayed by her side, explaining every step, answering every question, never once speaking over her. That night, Leona sat in Ember's hospital room, watching her sleep beneath clean sheets. And 4 in her arm, a cast on her leg. For the first time in what felt like years, they weren't cold. They weren't dirty. They weren't hiding. They weren't safe. Not yet. But they were seen. Amos stood by the window, hands in his pockets. "Why are you still here?" Leona asked. He thought for a second. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I just saw you and I couldn't leave." She stared at him. "Nobody helps for free." He nodded. "That's true. So what do you want?" He met her gaze, steady and calm. "I want you to be okay. That's all." She didn't trust him. Not fully. Not yet. But she didn't stop him from pulling a chair next to Ember's bed and sitting down. And for one long, silent night, they weren't invisible anymore. The hospital walls started to feel like a cage by the 3rd day. Leona never left Ember's side. She refused. Every time someone in scrubs came into the room, she stiffened, ready to block them with her own body if they dared suggest taking her sister anywhere. Ember was healing, but slowly. The cast ran from hip to ankle. Her fever had gone down, but her energy was gone. She barely spoke, and when she did, her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Smaller, shakier. Amos came every day. He brought things. Not big things. Small ones. Quiet things. A hairbrush. New socks. 2 books. One about dragons, the other about a donkey who wanted to fly. He read to Ember while Leona stared at the door, listening to every voice in the hallway like a guard on patrol. When Ember smiled, a tired, half-lidded smile, Leona noticed but didn't comment. Not yet. Amos never forced conversation. He just showed up, sat quietly, made sure they ate. It was on the fourth morning that Maribel returned with paperwork and a proposal. "There's a place," she said gently, crouching beside Leona's chair. "It's not a foster home, not a group facility. It's just a small boarding house run by a retired nurse. Her name is Dottie. It's temporary, but it's safe. Quiet. Clean." Leona frowned. "Like a shelter?" "No," Maribel said. "More like a stop on the way. Somewhere you can breathe. Keep each other close. No locked doors. No uniforms." Leona didn't answer right away. Maribel added, "And you wouldn't be alone. Amos would be part of the plan. He'd be listed as an emergency contact. He already signed the paperwork." Leona looked at him, stunned. "You're not my family." "I know," he said, "but I'll stay. As long as you want me to." It felt like a trap. It had to be. People didn't do that. Not in her world. But Ember, quiet, pale Ember, looked up from her pillow and said the first full sentence in days. "Can we go, Leo?" And that was it. 3 days later, after Ember was cleared for discharge, they left the hospital with a wheelchair, a folder full of instructions, and a box of donated clothes. Amos drove a dusty sedan borrowed from a friend. Leona sat in the back with Ember, holding her steady the entire ride. They drove east through the neighborhoods Leona had only seen from the alleys, past bright billboards and grocery stores with windows full of fruit, through streets where no one looked over their shoulder or hid in shadows. They arrived at a blue house with a white fence and a ramp built into the front porch. Dottie opened the door before they could knock. She was 65, maybe older, with short grey hair and a pink apron that said, "Bless this mess." Her voice was raspy, but warm. Her eyes scanned Leona from head to toe, not judging, just assessing like a nurse would. "You must be Leona," she said. "And you're the brave little one with the wild leg, huh?" Ember smiled, a real smile this time. Dottie stepped aside. "Come in. Shoes off. You both smell like fear and exhaustion." Inside, the house was small and smelled like fresh laundry and cornbread. There were hand-crocheted blankets on every couch and photos of strangers on every wall. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't new. But it felt lived in. Safe. Dottie showed them to a small room with 2 twin beds pushed together. "This is yours. For as long as you need it. Bathrooms across the hall. Don't steal my soap. That's my only rule." Leona didn't know what to say. That night, for the first time in weeks, they bathed with real water. Hot water. Leona helped Ember wash her hair, careful not to let the cast get wet. They ate cornbread, rice with butter, and some kind of soup with chicken that tasted like memory. When they lay down on the clean sheets, Leona tucked Ember in and slipped a dull butter knife under her pillow. Old habits died hard. She couldn't sleep at first. The silence was too quiet. No trucks above her head. No sirens. No dogs barking in the distance. Amos had left after dinner, but not before saying, "I'll be back tomorrow. You'll get tired of seeing me." "I doubt it," Ember had whispered. Leona hadn't said anything, just watched him go, the way you watch something you're afraid to hope for. The next morning, when the sun painted the room in orange and gold, Leona woke to find Ember still asleep, peaceful, warm, breathing easy. On the dresser beside her bed, there was a paperback book with a note on top. It said, "For Leona, the girl who didn't wait to be rescued. See you at 4. Amos. She read the note 3 times before hiding it in her sock drawer. She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped, and for the first time since the border swallowed her family whole, she let herself exhale. The blue house in East El Paso became a kind of in-between world. Not quite a home, but no longer a hiding place. For Leona, it was strange to be somewhere that didn't require constant vigilance. But she never let her guard fully drop, not even when Dottie made pancakes shaped like stars, or when Ember giggled watching cartoons on a donated tablet. She still kept the butter knife under her pillow, still listened to every car that passed, still memorized exits, shadows, and routines. But something else had begun to grow inside her. A quiet thought. A question. What if this doesn't end in loss? Amos came every afternoon, as promised. He helped Ember with her mobility exercises, brought her crayons and oversized coloring books. For Leona, he brought wordless offerings, a worn hoodie that didn't smell like bleach, socks with tiny stitched flowers, a spiral notebook and a pen. No questions, no pressure. Then one day, he brought a manila envelope. "Only if you're ready," he said, sitting with her on the front porch while Ember napped inside. Leona looked at the envelope like it might explode. "What is it?" "I talked to a friend of mine, Henry. He's a child welfare attorney. I asked him to look into your family, just in case there was someone out there who could help. Someone safe." Leona's eyes narrowed. "We don't need a new family. I know. I'm not trying to take you away from what you've built here. I just thought, if there's someone out there you want to find, you should have that choice." Leona hesitated, then took the envelope and opened it. Inside were documents, a printed map, and a note in Henry's handwriting. Name, Osric Thatcher. Location, Flagstaff, Arizona. Relation, brother of Grant Thatcher, father. Occupation, auto mechanic. Leona's fingers froze. She hadn't heard that name in years. Osric. Her father's brother, the one who used to send postcards from faraway states, always with oil stains in the corners. She remembered him faintly. A beard, a laugh that filled the room. He had fixed her bike once. She was 5. She didn't realize how badly she'd wanted someone familiar until her eyes started burning. "There's a number," Amos said quietly. "Henry can call, or we can write, or nothing. It's entirely up to you." Leona looked away. She wasn't used to choices. Most things in her life had just happened, violently, suddenly, without warning. She didn't know what to do when someone said you decide. That night, she sat at the table while Ember colored a picture of a girl riding a unicorn across a rainbow. "Leo," Ember said, eyes still focused on the page. "Do you remember the uncle who gave me the blue lizard?" Leona stared. It wasn't just any lizard. It was a floppy fabric toy, handmade and weird-looking, that Osric had sewn himself and given to Ember when she was barely walking. She used to tie it to her tricycle with yarn and pull it along behind her like a pet. Ember looked up. "I miss him." Leona didn't answer. The next day, she asked Amos to make the call. It took 3 days for Osric to get back to them. He had been on a job site in Sedona and hadn't checked his messages. When he finally called, Amos handed the phone to Leona. She stood in the hallway, heart pounding as the phone rang once, twice. "Hello," came a voice. Deep, scratchy, familiar. "Is this Osric Thatcher?" she asked. There was a pause. "Yes." "Who's this?" She swallowed hard. "It's Leona." Silence. Then, breathlessly, "Leona? As in, Grant's daughter? From Miranda?" "Yeah." "Oh my God," he said. "Oh my God. Where are you? Are you safe? Is Ember okay?" She couldn't answer. Her throat closed. "I've been looking," he said. "I mean, I didn't know where to look. We heard what happened. Nobody would tell us anything. The news, the shelters, nothing. I thought maybe." "She's okay," Leona whispered. "She broke her leg. But she's okay. Are you with someone? Are you alone?" Leona looked down the hall at Amos, who was talking to Dottie by the kitchen. "I'm with someone," she said softly. "Not family." But he stayed. Osric took a shaky breath. "I want to see you. Both of you. I've got a place in Flagstaff. It's not fancy, but it's yours if you want it. And I've got something I've been keeping, in case you ever turned up." 2 days later, he arrived at the house. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes, those were the same. He didn't try to hug them right away. He just knelt down in front of Ember, pulled something from his jacket pocket, and placed it in her hands. A blue cloth lizard, faded and missing a leg. Ember gasped. "Lagartito." Osric smiled, tears gathering in his eyes. "I fixed him. Kind of." Then he turned to Leona. "I don't want to take you anywhere you don't want to go. But if you ever decide you want a home, you've got one. Always." Leona didn't answer. Not yet. But she held the lizard in her hand long after he left that night, because in a world that had ripped everything away from her, here was a piece that had found its way back, and that meant something. If you're enjoying this story, leave your like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our content. It was late afternoon when the phone rang. Dottie was humming in the kitchen, folding towels still warm from the dryer. Ember was drawing cats with wings at the table, her cast propped on a pillow. Amos had just arrived with a new book and a bag of apples when the landline buzzed. The old rotary one Dottie insisted on keeping, even though it barely worked. She answered with her usual gruff charm. "You've reached planet Earth. This is Dottie. Who the hell's this?" Her voice changed as she listened. She turned slowly, eyes locking on Leona, who had just walked in from the backyard where she'd been sitting in the sun, trying and failing to feel normal. "It's for you," Dottie said carefully. "It's her." Leona felt the air leave her lungs. She took the phone with a shaky hand. Her voice barely made it out. "Hello, Leona." The voice cracked, faint, like it had been crying for days. It was her mother. "Baby, it's me. It's Mom. I found you." Leona didn't speak. "Are you there?" Miranda asked. "Sweetheart, please talk to me. I've been looking." "Where were you?" Leona whispered. There was silence on the line. Then a sob. "They took us," Miranda said. "At the border. They split us up. Your father and I. We fought to stay together, but they pushed us into different vans. I didn't know where they took you. I didn't even know you made it across." "I did," Leona said, voice hollow. "We did." "Ember, is she?" "She broke her leg," Leona said sharply. "But she's alive. Because of me." Miranda cried harder. "I'm in Laredo now. At a shelter. They helped me get new documents. I have proof, pictures, birth certificates, everything. I told them about you too. They said I might be able to get you back." Leona's stomach turned. Get you back. As if they'd been left behind. as if she hadn't held her sister in her arms while walking through heat and trash and blood and silence. As if she hadn't watched Ember fall asleep in a puddle of urine under a bridge, wrapped in a plastic tarp, praying to no one. She turned toward Amos, who had stood quietly by the hallway, watching, listening. "Amos," she said, handing him the phone. "She wants us back." He took it, listened for a few minutes, then stepped outside with it, giving her space. Leona sat down on the couch. Ember looked up from her drawing. "Was that Mommy?" Leona nodded once. "Can we see her?" Ember asked. "I don't know." Amos returned 10 minutes later, his face unreadable. He crouched beside her. "She's with a legal aid group in Laredo. They have records, photos, verified ID. She's trying to file for custody." Leona looked away. "She said she never stopped looking for you," he added. "And I believe her." Dottie crossed her arms. "Well, let's not forget, the system doesn't care about emotion. If she's got the documents, and she's proven who she is, they might order the girls returned." "No," Leona said flatly. "Not unless we want to." Maribel arrived an hour later, and Henry joined the meeting by phone. Together, they laid it all out. Miranda and Grant, the parents, were alive and legally entitled to petition for custody. If the court approved it, Leona and Ember could be placed back with them, possibly even moved across state lines. "But," Henry said firmly, "because of everything you've been through, and the fact that Amos has served as a de facto guardian during this crisis, the court may take your voice into account, especially yours, Leona." "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," Maribel said softly, "you have more power than most kids your age. You've been making decisions to survive. The system might listen if you say no." Leona stared at the floor. This should have been good news. Her mother was alive. She wanted them. She'd never stopped looking. She had proof. So why did it feel like a threat? Because Leona had something now that she didn't have before. She had safety. Not just walls and beds, but people. Amos, who read to Ember every night. Dottie, who kept the porch light on when Leona went outside just to breathe. Osric, who fixed Ember's broken lizard and who left voicemail saying, "No pressure, just checking in." She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was healing, and the idea of losing that, being pulled away into the unknown again, made her stomach twist. "What if they make us leave?" she asked quietly, that knife edge of panic creeping into her voice. "They won't," Amos said, sitting beside her. "You have a right to be heard. We'll go through this together. No one's going to make you disappear again." Leona stared at him. "You promise?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "I promise." She didn't know if she believed in promises. Not anymore. But something about the way he said it made her want to. The room was quiet, but Leona's heart pounded like a war drum. They were in Salt Lake City now, flown there by a non-profit that specialized in immigration reunification cases. A neutral site, halfway between El Paso and Laredo. Clean, bright, full of glass walls and polite people with clipboards. The kind of place designed to make people feel calm. But Leona wasn't calm. She sat in a folding chair in a wide room that smelled like lemon-scented floor wax, watching the door. Ember sat next to her in a wheelchair, a new cast decorated with cartoon foxes and a big pink heart that said, "Nayeli," the nickname Amos had given her. She bounced her foot anxiously and twisted the hem of her dress. Dottie stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, jaw set. Osric had driven up from Flagstaff the night before. He sat by the window, gripping a paper cup of coffee with both hands, not drinking it. Amos was next to Leona, his hand steady on her shoulder, not holding her, just reminding her he was there. Henry and Maribel were speaking to the officials on the other side of the room, finalizing the meeting's parameters. The arrangement was clear. This was not a legal handover, just a reunion, an introduction, a conversation. That was all. But to Leona, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then the door opened. Miranda stepped in first. She looked smaller than Leona remembered. Not physically, she was still tall, with the same thick black hair pulled into a braid, but emotionally smaller, hollowed out. Her eyes went straight to Ember, and when she saw her, something in her broke. She fell to her knees. "Me baby." Ember didn't hesitate. She pushed herself out of the wheelchair, stumbled a little, then rushed into her mother's arms. Miranda cradled her like she had been waiting her whole life to hold her again. They wept together, rocking back and forth, speaking a mix of English and Spanish so fast it blurred into pure emotion. Leona didn't move. Then Grant stepped in. Their father. He was thinner than she remembered, with a scruffy beard and a deep scar across his left wrist she didn't recognize. He looked older, worn down, like someone who had lived through a war. He didn't rush toward her. He stood still, tears in his eyes. "Hi, Leona," he said softly. She stared at him, at them. The crying, the hugging, the laughter mixed with sobs. "You left," she said coldly. Miranda looked up, still holding Ember. "They took us, baby. We didn't want to leave you." We screamed. "I didn't hear it," Leona interrupted. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut. "They shoved us into vans, separated us before we could even turn around," Grant said, stepping closer. "I thought I'd die not knowing if you were alive." "You didn't," Leona said. He nodded, lips trembling. "They didn't tell us anything," Miranda added. "Not for weeks. Then they said you were gone, that no one knew where you'd ended up. But I didn't believe it. I couldn't. Why didn't you find us sooner?" "Baby, we tried," Miranda whispered. "I went through every agency, every shelter. I lost everything, the papers, the money, the phone numbers. But I kept looking, every day." Leona turned to Amos. He said nothing, just gave her space. She looked at Osric, at Dottie, at Ember now clinging to Miranda's side like she'd found the missing piece of her soul. And still, she didn't move. Miranda stood slowly, Ember in her arms. "Can I hug you?" she asked. Leona didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "I'm alive because of them, not because of you." Miranda nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I know, and I'm so grateful they found you, that they protected you, that they saw what was too easy for the world to miss. I had to make every decision," Leona said. "When to hide, when to walk, when to lie, when to beg." I told her stories so she wouldn't scream at night. Grant's shoulders crumbled inward. "I'm not mad," Leona added. "That surprised everyone. I just don't know who you are anymore." Miranda stepped closer. "I want to know you again. I want you to know me." Leona hesitated. Then, slowly, she took one step forward and let her mother hug her. It wasn't a dramatic, full-body embrace. Leona's arms stayed at her sides, but she didn't pull away, and that was everything. After a while, they all sat down. They talked about the past, about what had happened, about where they'd been. Miranda showed photos, pictures of Leona and Ember when they were babies. The girls took turns holding them like they were holding proof that something before had existed. Something worth remembering. But Leona stayed quiet through most of it. Later, when the room had emptied out and it was just her and Amos outside by the vending machines, he asked, "How do you feel?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't know if I want to go back." "You don't have to decide that today. I'm scared if I go. I'll lose everything I found." "You won't," he said. "Not unless you want to." She looked at him. "You mean that?" "I do." She reached into her pocket and handed him something, a folded paper Ember had given her that morning. It had a stick figure drawing of their family. In the middle was Leona, surrounded by Ember, Amos, Osric, Dottie, Miranda, Grant. One word was written above it, in Ember's crooked handwriting. Together. The wind was softer in Flagstaff that spring. It carried the smell of pine and engine grease from Osric's garage, mixed with the distant scent of Dottie's cornbread baking in the kitchen. The blue sky stretched out like a promise above the modest house, the kind of sky that didn't ask questions, didn't press for answers. It just was. Ember sat on the porch steps, her cast finally gone, her legs swinging freely as she drew pictures of cats with wings, stars with smiles, and stick figures that always included too many people to fit on one page. Leona sat beside her, notebook in her lap, a pencil tucked behind her ear. She wasn't writing today, just watching the life that had rebuilt itself piece by piece. That morning, Nayeli, the name Ember had started using at school, had proudly walked into her first day of second grade, wearing sparkly sneakers and carrying a backpack donated by one of Amos's friends at the university. Her drawing of "The Family of My Heart" had earned a spot on the classroom wall. In the drawing, there was no separation between real family and found family. There was just everyone, holding hands, standing in the sun. Leona had watched her walk in without limping, without fear. Now she watched the sky and thought about how far they had come. Inside, Dottie hummed softly while folding laundry. Osric was under the hood of a car, his boots sticking out from beneath the bumper, cursing gently at a rusted bolt. Everything ordinary. Everything extraordinary. Amos arrived just before lunch. He didn't knock anymore. He just stepped inside, called out a soft "hey," and headed straight for the kitchen where he peeled apples or diced carrots or whatever Dottie told him to do. He belonged in the quiet way that some people do, not because they forced it, but because they showed up again and again until their presence became part of the foundation. Later, he joined Leona on the porch, handing her a glass of lemonade. "You're quiet today," he said, sitting beside her. She shrugged. "Just thinking. Dangerous." She smirked. He leaned back against the post. "You know, I got offered a full-time spot at the university. Benefits, bigger office, fancy stuff." "That's good," she said. "You deserve it." "I turned it down." She looked at him, surprised. He shrugged. "Didn't want to stop teaching part-time at the community center. That's where the good stories are." She nodded slowly, then asked, "Will you keep calling? If I ever go live with them?" He didn't flinch. "Every Sunday. Even if you stop answering." "What if I don't live here anymore?" "Doesn't matter. I'll still call." She looked at him, really looked. "Even if I grow up and forget to call back? Then I'll wait. Because wherever you go, you're still mine." Tears threatened to rise, but she blinked them back. She didn't need to cry. Not today. Because she wasn't choosing between families. She was choosing to have both. A week later, Miranda and Grant visited for the weekend. No pressure. No questions. Just soft smiles and long conversations on the back porch, while Ember braided her father's hair, and Miranda taught her how to fold tamales like Grandma used to. They brought photos, stories, recipes. They didn't ask when the girls were coming back. They just said, "Next time, we'll bring the garden seeds." And for the first time, Leona believed there would be a next time. That night, after everyone was asleep, Leona slipped out to the porch again. She opened her notebook and wrote 3 words on the last page. "I am home." And if you like this story, you'll surely love the next one appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and turn on notifications. See you next time.